Hey YouTube. So in the last video of this little Nix series, we had concluded with setting up some basic features we could enable and disable for our user environment. And this is actually the starting point for today also. So today I want to enable some more feature sets I am using in my personal configuration. What I also would like to do is to go a little bit over Home Manager and how you can use it to manage .files. In the last video, we had created some basic fish configuration for our user space. On this feature CLI set, I want to create a new option. This one will be for Fuzzy Finder. And when we have a look at the possible Fuzzy Finder options for Home Manager, there's a great website where you can just look up all the options that are available on Home Manager modules. And of course, you can select which NixOS branch you are using. And here you can see we have a couple of things we can configure. And when you click on them, you will always get an example. So for example, we can set the colors. And we can also set the default options and of course the default command for Fuzzy Finder. So the basic structure is as we had it in our last video. Here we have the shorthand for config.features.cli.fuzzyfinder. On this line we create the enable option for Fuzzy Finder, which will be a bool, so it's true or false. And down here we have the if block like in the last video, and within the if block we can start to configure Fuzzy Finder. So the bare minimum really for Fuzzy Finder is of course to enable it. As we are using fish in our example, I will also enable the fish integration, so we can save this one. And then we need to go up here to our default.nix, because on the last video we added an import for fish.nix, and we also need to make the import for Fuzzy Finder here. And then we go back to our host configuration for our user. And here we can just enable Fuzzy Finder. And as we have created a new file, we need to add it to our Git repository. And now I can just build the new configuration and send it over to our virtual machine. And here we get an error, so let me have a look what I did wrong. We have an unexpected end of file, so there's one missing here. Now we try again. Now this will build and send over to our virtual machine. And now I can just go to our virtual machine and log in. And as you can see, Fuzzy Finder is available, and I will just quickly log out. And as you might have noticed, we didn't start Hyperland when logging in, and that's of course because we disabled this at the end of our last video. So I will just set this to true again and rebuild our system. And now we try again, and Hyperland is starting. And I will just open a terminal here. This we don't need. And what I also would like to do is I want to get rid of this annoying error where Neofetch is not found on the new system. So I will just quickly create a new file for a Neofetch option. And I have this one also ready from my main desktop, so I can just copy this one over. And now we try again. And here it's the same principle. So I go up to the default.nix and I make sure my import, the new file I have just created, is here. So I will just neofetch.enable equals true. Now we add everything to our Git repo and we can rebuild the system once more. And now when I open a terminal here, you can see Neofetch is executed when the terminal is started. And for Fuzzy Finder, I want to add some more configuration here. So for example, I want to add some color styling here. And I would also like to define some default options. So for example, here I define that we get a preview and the preview will be executing the bat command. And down here, I want to make some changes to the default command. So for example, I want to exclude the .git folder from Git repositories because that will just deliver a lot of results that are basically useless. And now we can just rebuild our system again. And when we are back on our virtual machine, we can just start Fuzzy Finder. And you can see we have some other styling here and we get a preview on the right side. And we can also toggle the preview on and off. And of course, bat will throw an error when we have a binary file, or in this example, we have the command history. There it doesn't make sense to work with the preview. So that's working so far. And the last feature set I would like to configure today is for the case I am on a system where I have a Wayland session. Like in this example, we have a Hyperland session. So I will add some extra configuration for this. So under features, I create a new folder. And this one will be called desktop. Then I create a new file here and call this one default.nix. And then I create another file and just name this one Wayland.nix. And here in the Wayland.nix file, I can just take the module I already have on my main computer here. Here we have the shorthand again for the option in our system configuration, and here we create the enable option, and down here in our if block I will just install some additional applications. I install Grim for screenshotting, I install Hyperlog for lock screen, and the Qt6 Qt Wayland is, for example, necessary when you have Qt applications, like for example Kdenlive, which is a video editor, won't start if this is not available. Slurp is something that works together with Grim, where you can select parts of your screen for screenshotting. And here are some other Wayland-specific options. So we can just save this one. What I also would like to add is Waybar. So when we have a look at the Home Manager options, just enter Waybar in the search. You can see we can also configure Waybar over Home Manager. So we need to enable Waybar, and basically the settings can be configured very close to what the original is. So when you have a look at the default config here on the original Git repo for Waybar, you can see the structure is very similar. We can add programs.waybar and enable it with enable equals true. And now we can set some additional options. So as you can see here, we have programs.waybar.settings. So when you have a look here, we have programs.waybar.style. And here in the description, you can see that this basically needs some CSS. This is achieved here with a multi-line string in Nix. So we can just add it here. And I have already prepared this from my main machine here. So I can just copy this in. And that's just regular CSS. You can see how that works when you have a look at the Waybar documentation. So here are some color variables we refer down here. And That's basically just for styling everything when it comes to colors, fonts, and so on. And then I will just add the settings block I have already on my main machine here. So that's actually the bar you can see up here on the screen. And now I see there is a little mistake here because the folder has been added under CLI. So I will just move the folder one level up here. And then the default.nix file, I will basically replicate the structure we already have on our CLI folder. So at the top, we have the imports of the modules we define within our desktop folder. And in this case, this is just a Wayland module. And the default file is also meant to hold configuration that is not really worth an extra file. Down here we have just some simple program definitions, and down here there's just an extra block to install some extra applications. On this one, of course, what we need to do is we need to import Wayland.nix. And this I will leave empty for now. And then we can go back to our host definition here. So here we can just start with desktop. And then we can just say Wayland.enable equals true. What we also need to do is we need to import the desktop module. And just let me check once more. Oh, that should be right. And now I will just add everything to the Git repo and try to rebuild our system. And this was successful. I will quickly kill Hyperland and log in again. And as you can see, we have our Waybar up and running up here. The reason why Waybar is starting with Hyperland is that this is configured in the config file here for Hyperland. So you can see when Hyperland is executed, here we have an exec1 statement for Waybar, and basically all why it's starting automatically. So that was today's video. I hope these videos help you to learn a little bit more about NixOS and how to use it. And in one of the next videos, I will also show the advantage of having built out a configuration like this, because we are moving kind of step by step. But once you have the configuration ready and how you want your systems, you can basically just install from the flake and have the complete system set up. So that's also something we will have a look into in one of the next videos. And for the next video, I'm not really sure. Maybe I will flesh out some of the feature sets and prepare that and show you next week just structure. And then in one of the next videos, it's also time to take the configuration out of the virtual machine, because as I said in the first video, the reason for restructuring and rebuilding all this stuff was because I was getting a new computer, and the new computer has arrived. And when I have most of the configuration ready, it's good enough to move this to a real machine and work and configure on the same computer. So that's it from me today, and have a nice day, have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.